Started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining myself, Mary Lynn Harris of Hard at Work, and we're creating an impactful legacy for people. And I am so happy to have my guest, Jonathan McDonald, on the show with me today. We met on LinkedIn, and we're doing some things together. So I would really like you to welcome Jonathan to the show. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here because I get to speak about two of my most important causes.
Okay, great. So why don't you tell us, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started doing what you're doing.
Okay, very compressed because of the time we have. My name
Yeah.
is Jonathan MacDonald. What I'm doing at the moment is a project called Potency.world. We have a LinkedIn page. The website will be up and running hopefully within the next 6 weeks. And the reason I got to this, which is to absolutely accelerate the gender equality, because essentially there are lots of good examples of schools for women. The fall of Afghanistan talks about girls' education, but there are lots and lots of school efforts being made around the world, but they bring the education of girls up to where education is at the moment.
Right.
And the thing is that businesses have been reporting they can't get skilled staff for 15 years now. We've been educating people to pass tests rather, even though that doesn't transfer into any skill for the workplace. And so you've got people coming out of MBAs with this, with that, and the other. They get to work in Amazon warehouse,
right,
and they never pay off their student debt, and it leads to a wasted life. So Potency.world is basically going to take girls from 11 to 18 in a can be boarded but not needed to be boarded environment. Basically, a room is provided for all of our alumni when they're within our foundation. And that's going to change the way young girls' minds operate, because the major problem is the way that girls are represented in the media.
Right.
And that a young girl doesn't care, but they get to 11 and their confidence falls off a shelf because all of a sudden they go, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be. So how did I get to here? Basically, I'm 49. I'm a mixture of half Nigerian and half Spanish. I'm the product of a extramarital affair. So I was given up for adoption on day 2, and teeny bit mild neglect wasn't really picked up until I was adopted at month 9. And I only found out recently that, so my mum used to say to me, oh, your legs were like jelly when we got you home, jam in the US, when we got you home from the orphanage. And I'm like, well, baby's legs are like jelly. And yes, they are. Day 1 or day 2, but then they're being bobbed and crawling, and so by month 9 they should be quite independent. Mine were completely flaccid.
Right.
Now I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But when you read up sensory deprivation in babies, literally me off a page. So I'm a dyslexic. I only found out 5 years ago. And only then because I was writing a book and I read about myself in someone else's book. So I had a mad youth. And then at the age of 21, I talked my way into selling Yellow Pages. I got knocked down by the HR department, so I tracked down the area manager in the area I would be working in, went to his door and said, yeah, you want to speak to me? Your HR department's turned me down, which is the most salesy thing in the world.
Yeah.
Got that job, really high pay, so I could get motorbikes because my friends had motorbikes. Got a couple of bikes, VFR 850s they are now, and went to Spain, France, toured around on Europe on these bikes, no problem. Then I got a bike in 1995 called the Honda Fireblade, a 900cc sports superbike. So had that, great times, leery, yeah, best times. Met my girlfriend on it, and then the 29th of May 96, had a crash, lost the upper use of the upper right half of my body, which is paralyzed from a brachial plexus injury. I died 3 times. I have the most acute and chronic pain. So nerve pain. If you have toothache, that's one nerve.
Right.
Every single nerve, sensory, muscle, everything was torn out of my spinal column. And so the pain is like, it feels like it's in the arm, but it's not, it's in my head, but it feels like the whole of the lower arm's on fire. So you take that pain, and at first I had 6 years of drug and alcohol abuse. I mean, I really tried to kill myself, but not actually like, you know, kill myself. And after that, you have to find another way. And I was lucky enough to be sitting in the orthotics department at the hospital, and there was a thing for hospital radio, which is volunteers go and visit patients in hospital, play on a radio loop that's within the hospital grounds. It'd be on the internet now, but that sort of thing. And I started doing that, and I started volunteering with this guy on the adolescent ward, so children from 4 was our youngest to 18. And this hospital is for scoliosis, cancers, orthotic specialists. And so I was there when I started doing it. I was still in this drug-fueled rage. And then I started doing this. And so I started to actually think outside myself. And when I started in the children's ward, you see children in there with scoliosis, you see children with cancers and limbs being removed, and it gives you a smack up the arse. Your own,
a different perspective.
Yeah. And children are such a joy that I turned my focus round completely. So I'd write these scripts out. I'd clip out these Radio 4 comedy clips. I'd do all these sort of things instead of being messed up every week. So that's why I first started working with children. I volunteered in the primary sector. I did this thing, you know, Tony Robbins. Yeah, so his Unleash the Power Within, which I saw on an Oprah Winfrey TV show, converted into child language and meaning. And you take, so basically, I'm an NLP person. I see Tony Robbins. I go, oh, this story is too big to pack in. So motorcycle accident, broken wrist, then had 6 strokes. So I only found out I'm dyslexic because I had the brain injury, because I had to rebuild my consciousness. So I got to see myself putting it together. It turns out that most people don't watch their thinking, but that's yeah. So so I had the strokes, paid for my funeral, ready to die any moment. I wouldn't buy food for more than a week in advance. I got this opportunity to volunteer in a primary school. I'm sitting in the jacuzzi at the gym I joined because I'm, you know, if I'm going to die, I'm not going to die like a flid. And I get talking to this guy, and he goes, "Oh, you should volunteer in primary education. Primary children are great. Go there. Fantastic. Absolutely amazing." Then I see how children are spoken to by adults, and they are, look, I know that we as older people, to us, strict is beatings and the threat of beatings, which is absolutely bullying. It's child abuse, and would obviously in this day and age, but it was the way of times. And so what we have to understand, and what we can't understand from within ourselves, is that our frame of reference is not applicable to a child growing up now. That coercion and threat and abuse and control and hierarchy, okay, you get our result. Yeah, I could bully someone a third of my size with no power or authority. Well done. But that's not how you get the best out of anybody, least of all a child. Hence the Tony Robbins thing, shrieking about, jumping, laughing. I anchored them by doing a tap-to-tap, and they were going, "Arr!" And so I linked the anchor to them feeling all the greatest ways that a child could feel, bouncing around, screaming at the top of their voice. I mean, literally, how schools let me get away with it, I just don't know. But So I know myself about neuroplasticity. I know myself about how amazing children are both in hospital and in primary school.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote this book about my experiences called Children Are Spectacular, Why Aren't More Adults?
Right.
Because I think that children below 6 are a different species,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are so cyclically tied into cloning ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and living vicariously through our children
Mm-hmm.
that we just don't. I think many people don't understand that what they experience is not all there is.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it tends to be trauma or abuse or something which gives people often these visions. Some people, it consumes them. I definitely tried to kill myself for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that it happens for other people, but knowing that I can perceive the world so fluidly, whereas almost everybody else and people who are wildly cleverer and more qualified than me
Mm-hmm.
cannot do, in spite of their logic and intelligence. They just can't flip it around in their head. But flipping it around in your head is not actually different from thinking about dinner and thinking about breakfast at
Mm-hmm.
lunchtime. It's you're thinking about it. It creates a thing. It's not that I'm doing anything different in my head. It's just that what I'm doing in my head is about fluidity. So it's representations that are fluid, and that can be conditioned in the same way we condition out this brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
We can keep it there by showing multiple perspectives in all the discussions. So anyway, take a girl from 11 before her confidence falls off a cliff. Put her in an environment where she's surrounded by her peers to 11 to 18, where they're so self-defense classes, all sorts of just crazy stuff that children want to do, but they're available. And there will be 20% of the curriculum which will be health, competence, and financial security, all the things that we know people need to know.
Right.
But the major bulk will be intrinsically motivated projects to solve real world current day problems. And a great example of this, so there was a girl on a TEDx talk, I'm going back now 10 years, called Brittany Wenger. She was a 15-year-old girl, or at the time was 15, and a person in her family had died from breast cancer, and she found out while she was looking through about this that there are markers in the blood that determine that breast cancer is present, but human doctors, oncologists will not use this because it's too unclear. So a biopsy is a relatively large piece of flesh they take out. It's unpleasant, the results go away, blah, blah, blah. And she's thinking, well, if you could interrogate the blood sample, then surely you could predict cancer earlier and save more people. So she wrote an algorithm, machine learning. This is 10 years ago, before it became fashionable, and it has 10 questions. It's on the internet, called Cloud for Cancer, and it has 10 yes or no questions, which you put a blood sample on the slide and look at it, yes, no, basically. When it was first deployed, it was 98.9% correct in diagnosing cancers from the blood sample. And after a few thousand iterations, it went up to 99.97% correct diagnosis.
Wow.
And that kind of 15-year-old girl could be all 15-year-old girls, but for the toxic environment, I won't swear, but the toxic environment of our society, which crushes down this ambition. So that's potency.world. And I blur at a high speed because,
Yeah. No, I certainly get it. And when you were talking about abusive parents, I guess because we were abused as kids, we don't know any different. So we
Yeah,
grew up, and unfortunately, there's not a child in the world that comes with an owner's manual. So, if there was an owner's manual, okay, you had a baby, here's your owner's manual, then maybe that would make the difference. I don't know. But it's all trial and error. And unfortunately, as you were speaking, I was thinking, oh yeah, I got abused too, whatever. But I guess at some point in time, we have to decide if to flip the switch or flip the programming. And so for some people, Tony Robbins is their guy, and for me, it's not, but doesn't mean that he isn't doing great work, And there's some people that go and leave disappointed, So I think we just have to be more self-aware of what's going on and what we're thinking and what we're doing to other people. I guess that's why my thing is about kindness. Like
yeah,
if we are just kinder to ourselves, then it's a lot easier to be kinder to other people. But if like we're not kind to ourselves, remember we're talking this conversation about somebody giving my opinion about my background being too busy, right? So their
right.
mind is busy. So therefore the else is busy, right? So, but if she just stopped and took a look and said, how can I be kinder to her? She could have not said anything, right?
Mhm.
But she doesn't stop to think that. So, like you were talking about thoughts, we need to, do we actually look down our mental thoughts? So.
So I don't think, and this is a thesis in fluid as
Yeah.
always. um, but the more when I first found out that I was dyslexic, I went, oh yeah, of course, I failed English and I couldn't spell and I couldn't
Yeah.
punctuate, and it all came back to me.
Yeah.
And then oh man, I lost my train of thought. How do we get into that?
We got into that dyslexia you figured out because when you couldn't
Oh
do your
yes.
reading and
So,
writing and stuff.
so the dyslexic experience that I'm describing is seeing the world from multiple perspectives at
Right.
once.
Right.
And there's a book called The Gift of Dyslexia, and it lists these 8 common traits. And when I spot it in someone else, I go, "Let me read you these traits," and back every time.
Yeah.
So seeing the world in different perspectives means
Right.
that for me the world is fluid.
Right.
Like a desk is hard, or something like that is solid for the sake of argument, but what can be achieved in any situation,
Mm-hmm.
I can step easily from one to another, to another, to another, to another.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was reading this book called Think Again by Adam Grant, and he identified that there are various biases that we know,
Right.
so many biases, we can't
Right.
begin to know them all,
Right.
but confirmation bias is the one a lot of people have heard of, which is where once you believe a thing, any other information you repackage to fit your current belief. You don't do it knowingly, but
No.
you just only believe what you believe
Right.
until something comes along to really shift you. That's
Yeah.
just major.